Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. And we actually have quite a few viewer requests for this one. It is the 1985 film Enemy Mine. Here is your trivia question for today. Who does Willis quote that Jerry mistakes as a great human teacher? The answer will be at the end of this episode. So, our film starts off in the late 21st century, 2092 to be specific. At this point, humans have already reached out into the galaxy, and they've run into another species called the Drac, which are also reaching out into the galaxy as well. Unfortunately, the two sides cannot agree, and a war has been ensuing for multiple years now between the two species. We then jump to a smaller section of this war where a dogfight is ensuing between the two sides. It's here that we meet one of our main characters, Willis Stavage, who happens to be trying to shoot down a Drac ship. He manages to do so, but also gets damaged in the process and begins crashing towards the planet as well. Willis does manage to survive, unfortunately, his co pilot does not. Possibly alone on this planet, Willis Stavage begins to explore, and eventually he does find the crash site of the Drac that he shot down. Willis Stavage does manage to come face to face with the Drac, Jereba Shagan, and the two should be killing each other as they are mortal enemies, but it soon becomes a realization that they may have to depend on each other to survive here. The two of them will have to work together to find food, to make shelter, and even figure out what of the local fauna is dangerous. All the while wondering if either of their sides will come to rescue them, or will it just be the two of them for as long as they both can survive? This movie was directed by Wolfgang Peterson. Richard Long Crane was the original director on the project, but was taken out of it due to a disagreement. Now, before they landed on Wolfgang Peterson, they also potentially were going to bring in Terry Gilliam or David Lynch. The movie is based off of the novel of the same name, written by Barry Longyear. Longyear actually created the character Jeriba Shagan as a tribute to James Shigata, who the author actually would have wanted to play Jerry if there was ever a film. The Drac language in the film is essentially created from scratch, but much of it was actually just Russian pronounced in reverse. Now, it was actually Louis Gossett Jr. who played Jerry that came up with how the Dracs actually sounded, as he learned from a young age he could make that gargling sound while talking. Louis Gossett Jr. would actually take about 3 hours in the makeup chair each day to play Jerry. Did you happen to know that they originally offered the role of Jerry to Grace Jones, who unfortunately had to turn it down due to her scheduling? Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. would actually work together a few years prior to this film in Jaws 3. The film takes place over a 3 year span, which would technically go from 2092 to 2095. The vast majority of the volcanic landscape and Green Lakes were almost all shot in Lanzarote, one of the Canary Islands off the coast of Morocco. The rest of the film was shot in Munich, West Germany, at the Bavarian Film Studios. The artificial green pond where Willis and Jerry first meet was actually used in the movies Das Boot and The Neverending Story, both of which were actually directed by Wolfgang Peterson. The original novel did not actually have a mine at the end of the story. The film studio actually requested this be added in, as they felt the audience wouldn't understand the title Enemy Mine as being my enemy but in the possessive sense. Something else that's different from the book is when Willis finds an empty Pepsi can that alerts him that other people are there. In the original novel, it was actually a Coca-Cola can. One more last piece of trivia that's food related, and I'm sure you won't be too surprised by this, but the Drac rations were actually made out of green jello. So when it comes to the film Enemy Mine, I really love this movie. It's definitely, in my opinion, one of the best 80s sci-fi films that was put out. And especially due to the fact that both Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. did such a great job in this movie. I love the makeup, I love everything about it, and the fact that the story involves primarily just two characters and still keeps you interested the whole time. So I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 5. Now, if you're looking for other films that might have a similar feel to this, ones I would recommend would be Starman, The Last Starfighter, Avatar, and Red Planet. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, who does Willis quote that Jerry mistakes as a great human teacher? At one point in the film, Willis tells Jerry, If at first you don't succeed, try again. When Jerry asks who told him this, he states he learned it from Mickey Mouse. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.